Minister, just to ask, perhaps maybe you might outline the amount of events and the events that are taking place in Sligo there on Culture Night, which is taking place this Friday night, please.
Thank you, Deputy McLaughlin. Culture Night has grown from a relatively small-scale culture event, staged only in Dublin in 2006, to the significant national cultural event that it is now, with over 400,000 people visiting museums, galleries, historic houses, artist studios and cultural centres across the country on the night. And I myself have been very impressed in my role as Minister at the variety of events which I've been able to attend on Culture Night as Minister. And in 2018, 1,606 venues across the island of Ireland participated in Culture Night with an attendance of 420,000. And nationally, events are run in partnership with local authorities. Events were also held throughout Northern Ireland and overseas. And in 2018, Sligo hosted 38 events in 19 venues and welcomed 2,435 visitors. Culture Night will take place this year, this Friday, September the 20th, from 4 to 11 p.m. And details of events in every area are available on www.culturenight.ie. And it's anticipated this year that attendance figures will increase. And this year, Sligo Deputy has been allocated funding of $4,500 to assist with the cost of events. And this funding is provided on a matched funding basis through the local authority. And I know that Sligo has always been a place with vibrant, active and devoted cultural community. And some of the innovative events in the Sligo programme for 2019 include Art House Open Studio, Sligo Global Kitchen at the Model and the Cultural Co-Row at the Hawkswell Theatre. And it should also be noted, Deputy, that my department has allocated a further €183,005 to projects in the Sligo area through my department's Creative Ireland programme in 2018 and 2019, including His Deep Gaze and for activities in Crinú na Nóg. The cultural scene, I think, is bubbling and bursting and crackling with new ideas and pioneering practices and winning the world over. It calls on people across Ireland not to miss out and get out and support our culture creators, big and small, across the country this Friday. And around every corner there's going to be something to explore, from awesome animation and stunning live projections, I'll just finish this, to rattling readings and pulsating performances, exhilarating exhibitions and resounding concerts.
Thank you very much indeed, Leslie Hurl, and also to you, Minister. Certainly, and I welcome the allocations of money that have been made to Sligo and indeed the local authorities, but also to the Model and the Hawkswell over the last number of years. And I mean, you have mentioned there the events that are taking place, and I would compliment everybody associated with Sligo County Council for the amount of effort and commitment they have put in over the last number of years. It's increasing. The numbers are really very, very encouraging over the last while, and certainly again for this Friday night. And I think that it's vitally important that the funding, and you have, and rightly so, from your department under the Creative Arts, given so much funding, but also in relation to the events that will take place on next Friday night, $4,500, which is badly needed by the local authority, because matching funds can be difficult at times, but certainly I think it's vitally important that everybody, particularly people who are participating, but also people on the street, that they come out on Friday night, not only in Sligo, but indeed all over the country. And certainly it's very, very encouraging, Las Concura, to see the amount of people that are coming out. So I would hope, Minister, and I would ask that going forward, that certainly within your department, that funding would be considered for all of these events again in the future going forward. Thank you.
Minister.
Yes, and I do hope that that will be the case, Deputy, in terms of funding for Sligo. As you mentioned, there's $4,500 this year, which was the same as last year, and it certainly, no doubt, will be put to good use on Friday night. As you know, I was recently in Sligo, well, in March of this year, and I visited the Hawkswell Theatre, which has received capital grants from us. And the Hawkswell, as we know, is a 340-seat theatre which hosts a diverse programme of arts and entertainments and includes professional and amateur drama, a wide range of music from traditional and jazz to opera, dance, pantomime, children's theatre and comedy. I was also in Sligo Deputy on the 19th of May of this year. I attended the National Famine Commemoration Sligo Town, and I also visited the Model Arts and Nyland Gallery, which features one of the largest public holdings of work by Jack Butler Yeats. It also features a broad range of both traditional and contemporary works by artists including Nora McGuinness, Dorothy Cross, Alice Marr, Clodagh Emo, Eamon O'Kane, Sean McSweeney, Estella Solomons and Paul Henry, amongst many others. I was also at the launch of Project Ireland at the Institute of Technology in Sligo on the 16th of February 2018, where, as you know, Deputy, we announced details of almost 1.2 billion in capital spending plans for my department.
To acknowledge, Minister, first of all, the funding, and you're quite right in relation to the Hawkswell, that money was very well received. Work is about to begin on a huge development there at the Hawkswell in Sligo, and also the wonderful works that have been done at the Model. And indeed, great credit is due both at the Model and the Hawkswell to the staff, and indeed the participants, and indeed everybody that's supporting those very fine facilities in Sligo town. I mean, you take the Model, for instance, and you've been there on a number of occasions, and indeed also in the Hawkswell when you announced additional funding to see the enthusiasm in those, both of those areas, and indeed many other areas. And I think that on this occasion we're talking about perhaps maybe Sligo County Council going forward and the amount of events that they are proposing and have in the programme for Friday night. But I think that going forward, certainly I would be appealing, Minister, that you would always at all stages, and have been very, very supportive on your visits to Sligo on the announcements that were made in relation to the two major projects in relation to the Hawkswell and indeed to the Model Arts Centre. Thank you very much indeed, Minister.
Yes, and as I mentioned, the Hawkswell Theatre this Friday, Ravif, Zaida and Circa Fox will perform Sendania, which is about exile and terror, and I think that's going to be really powerful. And also the Model, the Sligo Global Kitchen, will bring communities together to enjoy a global food experience. And also the Yeats Society in Sligo will be hosting Sisters, 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 which will be by storyteller Imelda Ryan Jones. And then in the Sligo Masonic Hall also on Friday, there will be a wonderful tour around the building about the Masonic Order. And also, Deputy, just to mention, in relation to Sligo, the small-scale local festivals and summer schools funding scheme, where in 2019 the Sligo Feis Ceoil received €2,000, the Yeats Society Sligo, the Yeats International Summer School received €5,000, and the Enniscrone District Community, the Black Pigs Festival, in 2018 received €1,500. So I will continue to support Sligo in any way I can. I hope that you all enjoy Culture Night.
Listen, I'm anxious to get a few more questions. The next one, Deputy Durkin has requested permission for Deputy McLaughlin to take it. Yeah, I'm giving it to you now, but I'm anxious to get other deputies in as well.
Sorry. Do you want me to?
You have to pose a question.
Yes, please. In the absence of Deputy Durkin, who is otherwise occupied at a meeting, he asked me if it was possible, and thank you very much indeed, Laskin Ceoil, for giving me the opportunity to raise this on behalf of my colleague, Deputy Bernard Durkin, to ask you, Minister, the actions that you can take to restore or protect 82 species of birds and animals deemed to be extinct or threatened with extinction, and if your department can sponsor specific schemes nationally to address the red lists which are specified there, and will make perhaps a statement on the matter. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy. My department, through its National Parks and Wildlife Service, is responsible for implementing the Wildlife Act, which is the primary legislation underpinning the protection of biodiversity and nature in Ireland. And the Wildlife Act affords protection to a range of habitats and species and provides for regulation and control of activities that impinge on biodiversity, such as hunting and trade. And the legislative framework in place to protect biodiversity is further strengthened by the European Community's Birds and Natural Habitats Regulations 2011, which also fall under the remit of my department. And these regulations transpose the EU Birds Directive and the EU Habitats Directive into national law and provide for protection of certain habitats and species across the European Union and give a framework for specific measures to be taken to target areas of concern in each member state. And the main instruments provided for are the designation of special protection areas aimed at the protection of threatened species of birds and special areas of conservation aimed at protecting other animal species and habitats. And my department is also responsible for developing and publishing Ireland's National Biodiversity Action Plan. And the most recent plan, which was Ireland's third, was published in October 2017 and contains a range of actions to protect and conserve biodiversity, including measures to restore and conserve habitats and protect vulnerable species. And the National Parks and Wildlife Service, working together with national experts and colleagues in Northern Ireland, produces the regional red lists for the island of Ireland. And red lists, Deputy, are published on an irregular basis as data sets and the necessary national expertise for taxonomic groups become available. And in addition, threat response plans are being prepared by the National Parks and Wildlife Service as part of Ireland's response to the judgment of the European Court of Justice in case C-183/05 and the requirement to establish a system of strict protection for species that are listed in Annex 4 of the Habitats Directive. And these plans provide detailed information on range, distribution and habitat, and they also focus on the particular threats facing each species and identify the measures required to address these threats, as well as identifying who is responsible for implementing them and providing a time frame for delivery.
Deputy McLaughlin.
I know that Deputy Durkan, I suppose everyone in this chamber would be certainly concerned about, there are many sensitive birds and animals, and there is huge concerns. You take, say, for instance, the corncrake, and there are many others. And people say to me on a regular basis that, it's nearly a thing of the past. And I think that it's vitally important that your department and indeed your officials and yourself, that everything can be done, and particularly and you mentioned about the special areas of conservation, so as that these areas are maybe enhanced or in fact even increased in areas to help these species and to protect the various birds and animals that are deemed that could be extinct in a number of years and are certainly threatened with it unless that we now take action, and now that we are aware of it, and you have outlined that through your statement there, Minister, and I certainly would appeal to you to ensure, I suppose on my own behalf, but indeed on behalf of my colleague who asked me specifically to appeal to you, Minister, to do whatever can be and whatever is possible to ensure.
Minister.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. I believe you mentioned the corncrake there, and the population of corncrakes in Ireland has been monitored annually since 1993, but the population is critically low, with an estimated 83% decline between 1978 and 2018, and with only 153 approximately calling males remaining. And additionally, this population has declined by 86% in its breeding range as well from 1972 to 2018. But since 2005, the population has remained stable, and there are 9 special areas of protection, which you mentioned, which have been designated for the protection of breeding corncrake populations in Ireland, with an estimated 70 calling males, which is approximately 45% of the total national population. And there are a lot of positive outcomes that we're doing and conservation measures for the corncrake, and they include provision of early cover dominated by broad-leaved herbaceous species like the iris or nettle, the suitable corncrake friendly mowing regime with late cutting and friendly mowing pattern, and also late cover provision by leaving some field edge strips unmown until September and maintaining early cover strands through to the season end, and also in field operations reduced or removed from late April, and general access to meadows kept to a minimum from May to August.